Chapter 3, Section 4, Part 1, we're going to go over the quadratic formula. Right, the quadratic formula is this formula here that helps us find the solutions of a quadratic equation. So our quadratic equation we know is in the form of x squared plus x plus a constant is equal to 0. The coefficients in front of our x squared and x are our a and b, and then our constant is our c. And then we take our a, b, and c and plug it into this handy dandy formula. So our formula is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So all we're doing is taking our a, b, and c and plugging it into the formula. And that'll help us find our solutions to the quadratic equation. So let's look at our first example. So we need to solve using the quadratic formula. First step, super important, it always has to be equal to 0. So we need to move this 5 to the other side of our equation. So we can do that by subtracting 5 on both sides. So our new equation is x squared plus 3x minus 5 is equal to 0. Now we need to find our a, b, and c, and then we plug that into our quadratic formula. So our a is our coefficient in front of the x squared. If there's nothing there, it implies that our coefficient is 1. So our a is 1, our b is 3, and c is negative 5. Our quadratic formula is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So now we plug in. So we have negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 3 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 5 over 2 times 1. And then we simplify. So negative 3 plus or minus, we have to simplify everything under our square root. So 3 squared is going to be 9. And then we have minus 4 times 1 times negative 5. So since there's 2 negatives here, it's going to become a positive. And 4 times 5 is 20. And then this is over 2 times 1, which is just 2. So we have negative 3 plus or minus 9 plus 20 is 29 over 2. Now, we need to find our factors of 29 to see if we can simplify this more. Which 29 is prime, so can't simplify. So our two solutions to this quadratic equation is negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 29 over 2. We have 2 more examples like this. So using the quadratic formula, we need to find our solutions to our equations. So our quadratic formula, negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2 times a. So our a is 1, our b is negative 6, and our c is 4. We plug everything in. So we have negative 6 plus or minus the square root of negative 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times 4 over 2 times 1. Now we simplify. So negative 6 makes this a positive 6 plus or minus the square root. Negative 6 squared is 36 minus 4 times 1 times 4, which would be minus 16, over 2 times 1, which is 2. We can simplify some more. So we have 6 plus or minus 36 minus 16 is 20. And we can simplify the square root of 20. 20 breaks down into 4 times 5. The square root of 4 is 2, so this would be 2 square root 5. So x is equal to 6 plus or minus 2 square root 5 over 2. And again, we can simplify this just a little bit more because we see that all of our numbers are divisible by 2. So we can pull out a 2 from the top and pull out a 2 from the bottom. So this is now x is equal to 6 divided by 2 is 3, plus or minus 2 divided by 2 is 1, so we're just left with square root 5, and then we're left with 1 on the bottom. So our answer is x is equal to 3 plus or minus square root 5. So just plugging everything in and a bunch of simplifying is all that we need to do to solve. For number 2, we need our equation to be equal to 0, so we have to move this minus 7x to the other side. We do that by adding 7x to both sides. So 2x squared plus 7x plus 4 is equal to 0. We have our a, our b, and our c, and we plug in. So our formula is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c over 2 times a. So negative 7 plus or minus 7 squared is 49. 4 times 2 times 4 is 36. 32. 4 times 4 would be 16. 16 times 2 is 32. And then this is over 4. 49 minus 32 is 17 over 4. And we can't simplify the square root of 17, so we are done here. So our answer is x is equal to negative 7 plus or minus square root of 17 over 4. Again, we are solving using the quadratic formula. We need it to be equal to 0, so we have to move everything to one side. So I'm going to subtract 12x on both sides. So it cancels out. So we have 25x squared minus 20x. And then I want to move the 4 to the other side, so I'm going to add 4 to both sides. So it cancels out on the right. So plus 4 is equal to 0. So this is our a, this is our b, and this is our c. Our quadratic formula is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2 times a. So we plug in. So we have negative b, which is negative 20 plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c over 2 times a. Now we simplify. Negative 20 becomes positive 20 plus or minus negative 20 squared is 400. 4 times 25 is 100, times 4 is 400, over 2 times 25, which is 50. So this is x is equal to 20 plus or minus the square root. 400 minus 400 is 0. The square root of 0 is just 0. So plus or minus 0 would also be 0. So if we have 0 under our square root, we can just get rid of our plus or minus and the square root. Because the square root of 0 is 0, plus or minus 0, we don't need that. So this is 20 over 50, which simplifies to 2 over 5. So here we have one solution, which is just x is equal to 2 over 5. Alright, our next example. We need everything on one side of our equation, so I'm going to subtract 13 on both sides. So this is negative x squared plus 4x minus 13 is equal to 0. Our a is negative 1, b is 4, c is negative 13. So I need to plug everything into our quadratic formula again. Is negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac over 2 times a. So our b is 4, negative 4, plus or minus the square root of 4 squared, which is 16, minus 4 times negative 1 times negative 13 over 2 times a, which is negative 2. So negative 4 plus or minus the square root 16 minus, so we have to do negative 4 times negative 1 times negative 3. This is going to be a negative number because there's 3 negatives. 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times 13. Let's do that on the side here. 13 times 4. 4 times 3 is 12. 4 times 1 is 4. So 52 over negative 2. So x is equal to negative 4 plus or minus 16 minus 52 is negative 36 over negative 2. Negative 36, the square root of negative 36, simplifies to 6i. And now we see that all of our numbers here are divisible by 2, so we can simplify one step further. So this is x is equal to negative 2 plus or minus 3i over negative 1, which we want to get rid of that negative 1 also, so we can divide everything by negative 1. So this is now a positive 2. Again, this is plus or minus. It doesn't change. 3i. So if we wanted to, we could split this up as negative 2 plus 3i over negative 1 and negative 2 minus 3i over negative 1. And here, this is where our signs in the middle would change, but since we're writing it just as plus or minus, we're just talking about the two different ones. So if we simplified this, divided everything by negative 1, this would be 2 minus 3i, and this would be 2 plus 3i, but again, we would write this as 2 plus or minus 3i. So it may look like our plus or minus is not changing, but technically it is when we divide by negative 1. So our answer is 2 plus or minus 3i. So I just simplified to go from here to here. Okay, we have one last example. We're just going to look at 4. Oops. So we're just going to look at number 4. If you guys need more practice, you can do 5 and 6 on your own, but it's just plugging it into the quadratic formula. So definitely practice if you guys want. The hardest part here is just making sure you plug in the right stuff into the quadratic formula, making sure your formula is right, and not getting the signs confused. So our quadratic formula is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So now we need our equation to be equal to 0, so I'm going to add 8x to both sides. Got to keep this in the right order, so we have x squared plus 8x plus 41 is equal to 0. Our a is 1, our b is 8, and our c is 41. So we plug in. So we have negative 8 plus or minus the square root of 8 squared, which is 64, minus 4 times 1 times 41 over 2 times 1. So negative 8 plus or minus 64 minus 4 times 41. So 41 times 4 is 164. So 64 minus 164 over 2. So this now becomes negative 8 plus or minus the square root of negative 100 over 2. So x is equal to negative 8 plus or minus square root of negative 100. Square root of 100 would be 10, and then the negative comes out as an I over 2. We can see that all of our numbers here are divisible by 2. So we're going to divide everything by 2. So we have x is equal to negative 4 plus or minus 5i. And then 2 divided by 2 would be 1, so we get rid of that 2 in the denominator. Our answer is x is equal to negative 4 plus or minus 5i. Okay, so this is everything for 3.4 notes. 3.4 part 1. When I come back on Tuesday, if you guys want me to do 5 and 6, I definitely will, but I think you guys have had enough practice with this, so you can go ahead and get started on the homework. I'll see you guys tomorrow.